An early season slump can be just that, a slump, no different than a rough patch at any other point of the year. But sometimes, early season struggles can be a troubling sign of what's to come. And that's the case in Denver, where the Nuggets' shaky start is showing us just how far the 2023 champions have fallen. Denver's core four is still in place, but between KCP in 2024 and Bruce Brown and Jeff Green in the summer of 2023, the Nuggets have watched 3 of their top 7 rotation pieces from the title team walk for nothing in free agency. They also have a math problem. Denver already ranked dead last in three-point attempt rate last season, and that was with 40% shooter KCP launching more than 4 per game. Another issue for Denver, and one we touched on when after Jamal Murray signed a max extension, is that the Canadian sharpshooter just hasn't looked quite right since an ankle injury and other ailments slowed him down last spring and in the Olympics. The last red flag has to be that both of Denver's opening week losses came in the Mile High City, which is supposed to be the association's toughest place to play. The Nuggets went 67-15 at home over the last 2 seasons. So yeah, an 0-2 start to this year's campaign, which included a loss to the Kawhi-less Clippers, is concerning. Look, Nikola Jokic's Nuggets are going to bounce back, and they'll probably cruise to the playoffs. But 6 months from now, when it becomes painfully clear that this team is no longer a surefire contender, remember these opening week warning signs. And with that, welcome to the Unfiltered Show. My name is Joseph Casciaro. I'm joined today in studio by Chicco, Nacion, and Joe Wolfond. What's going on, fellas?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Wolfond, I know you got some things you want to get off your chest.
I'm glad to be here to rein you back in a little bit, Cash. I feel like we're back on the PTR studio, and I'm here to just moderate your takes a little bit. So I'm happy to be here to do that.
I need to be checked. Someone needs to check me, and that's what Wolfond's here to do. All right, I opened there with a little rant about the Nuggets, which people can see more about on this week's Unfiltered on Friday. For now, I want to get into a discussion about who and what or teams or players or trends that have caught our eye in the opening week. We all picked a topic. We'll start with the one I ranted about, which was the Nuggets, who started 0-2, end up winning in Toronto last night to get to 1-2, but far from a comfortable win in a game they were heavily favored, had to go to overtime, needed Scotty Barnes to leave the game late, I think they were down 10 with 2 minutes to play. I guess from their perspective, a win is a win, and they just needed to get one by any means necessary. But, Wolfond, how concerned are you about this 1-2 start that also, included a game that very much could have seen them go 0-3 with 2 pretty bad losses?
Moderately concerned, I would say. I think I'm not ready to say that Jamal Murray is cooked at, I don't know, what is he, like 28 now? Or I just think, look, I know this time around it feels a little bit different because of the way the playoffs went for him last year, the way the Olympics went. Didn't look good in preseason, hasn't looked great through the first 3 games of the year, but he's a slow starter, always has been. That's why he's never been an all-star before. I think ultimately Jamal Murray will be fine. I'm not super worried about that, in spite of the injury stuff and the way he's looked over the past few months. The three-point shooting is a legitimate concern. 29th in three-point attempt rate, 23rd in three-point percentage right now. Again, some of that stuff I think is going to sort itself out. Murray will shoot better. I don't think MPJ is going to shoot 20% from deep.
Russell Westbrook will continue to shoot 10% from deep, though.
Possibly, but I don't think Russ will be quite as bad as he's been, although I had some questions about the fit initially. I certainly have had those concerns validated in these first few games, and their bench is just killing them right now, which is not a new phenomenon in Denver, but I don't think it's ever been quite this dire in the Jokic-Murray era. And it's just funny thinking about the team as a whole, because when we think about what the Nuggets have been in the Jokic and Murray era and their path to contention during those years, it's elite offensively and defensively, they're just good enough to keep them in that conversation. And now it's we've talked about this a bunch, but during that championship season, they were a top 5 defense for the second half of the year. Yep. And then were the number 4 ranked defense during the playoffs. They backed that up last year. They were a top 10 defense pretty much from start to finish. I think they finished 8th or 9th. And they're a top 10 defense right now through the first 3 games of the season, but they're currently 29th in offensive efficiency. That is the problem with Denver right now. The shooting is a huge part of that. And I think you saw I don't think it's a great barometer, like their opening night game against OKC, because that, to me, is going to be the best defensive team in the NBA this year. But I think you saw where, in the past, if you have Jokic going up against a guy like Chet Holmgren, who's going to essentially demand that the defense throw auto double teams at Jokic on every catch, which the Thunder did, and Jokic is able to make them pay by beating the rotations with his ability to pass the ball 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of those defensive rotations, but they're not leading to buckets because nobody can hit a three, then you let the defense off the hook, and there's only so much that Jokic can do to, lift the level of everybody around him. So I think the bench, the three-point shooting in terms of volume and accuracy are legitimate concerns. At the same time, I have an inordinate amount of faith in Jokic. To me, he's still the best player in the league. I think Murray will be better. And I think at a certain point, the fact that their defense has continued to be this good gives me confidence that come the middle of the season, we'll still be talking about them as maybe a fringier contender than they've been the last couple of years, but a contender nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think that to me is like the point I was making, where it's like they've got the best player in the world. They'll be fine in the bigger picture, but I just don't buy them as like a surefire kind of sleepwalk to contention team anymore. And Chicco, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm probably like in the same boat. Like you touched on the 3-point shooting, the bench struggles. Those are things like we were well aware of last year. Like that hasn't changed. And I think like losing KCP, that's a big loss. A guy that's a reliable floor spacer, someone that's going to space the floor and, be an extra option for when Jokic sees those double teams and traps that, he faces on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely, and also we can't discount KCP's defense, having that at the point of attack, especially in a matchup against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think for sure that could have come in handy. It could have really helped them. But I want to hit on like the bench. I mean, they're 29th right now, 17 points per game, second to last in the league, and they were 25th last year. And it just seems like they haven't been able to kind of replace the guys in the depth they had during their championship season. They've tried to bank on Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther to kind of take those next steps. But they've just kind of been inconsistent. Like there is some potential there.
They're young, right?
Yeah. And I think part of the problem was last year their roles were kind of inconsistent. They were in and out of the rotation. So I think as the year goes on, they're going to get a chance to kind of get some consistent run. And, we'll start to see and find out soon whether or not those are pieces that they can rely on going into the season.
Yeah, I think like the idea of, okay, they were this capped out team. They were older. Like they couldn't sign everyone. They couldn't keep everyone. And they hoped to replace them with some intriguing young talent. And I get like even Christian Brown replacing KCP in the starting lineup, I think like is fine. Like Brown is a solid two-way player, but even when you think of like, and the percentage is good 3-point wise, but he doesn't shoot at the volume KCP does. And then even when you think of like Strawther and Watson, I think they're going to be solid rotation players in the NBA. I just don't know if they're both ready to be like key rotation contributors on a contending team right now. And I think that's the issue they might run into. And then you start to think bigger picture, and it's like, look, Jokic is the best player in the world. He is the great, neutralizer and equalizer out there, and he always gives you a chance. But you start to think about the money they've paid these other guys, and I get it. Like they wanted to keep the core four of the band together for the most part. Like they're gonna forget Jokic. They're gonna owe Murray, Porter, and Gordon over $122 million a year for the next 3 years. They're not really going to have the ability to add too much along the margins. So they need the Brown, Watson, Strawther. Brown, I think, is kind of there. It's more like Watson and Strawther that are.
I think Brown's been their second best player.
Agreed.
So far. And I think to the point about him versus KCP, I think the reason they're missing KCP right now so much is that it does further thin out the depth.
Yeah.
And not that this matters. I'm sure he's going to turn around. KCP is shooting 12% from deep with
Very
Orlando
rough
so far.
Westbrook-like.
I think Brown at this point is arguably a better defender than KCP in terms of his ability to cut and finish at the rim, finish in transition. I think he's ahead of where KCP is at. I think you miss having another quality rotation player, and of course one that fit with their starting group as well as KCP did. But Christian Brown has not been the problem.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that he hasn't hit his threes, he's passed up a couple open threes. I think he's been tremendous. But this is I don't know how they're going to sort out their rotation patterns as the season goes along. Through these first three games, they've had a few minutes every game where they rest Jokic and Murray at the same time.
Untenable.
I don't know if it makes sense for them to do a full-scale stagger where you literally have one of them on the court the entire time. because you have to think about maximizing the amount of time that they're on the court together. That's when the team is at its best. But we're going to have some fun, I think, with small sample sizes on this show. So 17 minutes so far this year with Jokic and Murray on the bench. You guys want to guess what their offensive rating is in those 17 minutes?
With both of them on the bench?
Yeah.
It made me sneeze. It probably should have made me gag. I'm assuming it's going to be really bad.
It's bad. It's 45.7.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah.
That's their offensive rating.
That's their offensive rating
Yeah.
in 17 minutes
And
with Jokic and Murray on the bench.
By the way, we've got it up right now, the 5 least efficient offenses in the league, to give people some perspective. The worst offense in the league is 101 per 100 possessions.
Yeah.
And you said they're 40-something.
45.7 with both of those guys on the bench.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't – if you were, like, going to try to survive the Jokic on the bench minutes, I feel like – and the majority of the time Murray is out there for those minutes, but – I mean, we're talking about 17 minutes across 3 games, but even that, like, that's enough to lose you a couple games, right? The fact that you're going 17 minutes, scoring 45 points per 100 possessions. So I think maybe there's some things that they can do with their staggering or substitution patterns to avoid that. But I think the bottom line is, like, those guys just need to be better. Like, they need Russ to be better. Like, they're banking on him to be better than he's been. They're banking on Saric to be better than he's been. He has not been the answer at backup center. And like I think we can take for granted that they're going to struggle with Jokic off the floor. That's been the case throughout pretty much his career in Denver. But can you get to a point where you're not completely tanking a game in the few minutes that he has to sit? And I think they can get to that point. But, like, it's rough sledding right now for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I want to get to the topics you guys picked. Chicco, we're going to let Wolfond go first because your topic is going to end up bleeding into our second segment because you went deep, and I like it.
A little off the board.
No, I like it.
love it.
I like it. So, Wolfond, hit us with the player, team, trend, whatever that has caught your eye through opening week.
Yeah, contrary to Chicco, I went pretty broad with this one. But I just think what has really stuck out to me is that the Celtics and Thunder look like they're in a class by themselves. And I know it's very early to say that, but it does validate something I felt, and I think a lot of us felt coming into this season, which is that these are the clear-cut favorites in their respective conferences.
Just to interrupt, did we all pick them to make the finals? I know that. Did you pick them to make the finals?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so there you go.
I think I may have had the Knicks actually, but I had the Knicks and Celtics in the East Final. But I had the Thunder win the championship.
I had the Thunder beating the Celtics in the finals, and I think the reasons that I felt so confident in each of those teams, respectively, is what has borne out in this first week. The Celtics, in that they are just like overpowering offensively, and the Thunder in that they are completely smothering defensively. And you look on like the other side of the floor, it's not like Boston's defense or OKC's offense is anything to sneeze at either. It's just that I think those units are almost overshadowed by how dominant they are at the other end of the floor. And I think that's very much what we've seen through this first week. Like, the Celtics look completely unstoppable with their array of shooting, obviously, first and foremost, but also, like, the ability of just everyone they put on the floor to, like, make plays off the dribble, drive closeouts, get into the teeth of the defense, spray out passes, make the next play and keep the ball moving. That's how they create as many open threes as they do. And you end up at a point where, you know, through 4 games, they're averaging over 53 pointers per game and shooting those threes at 42%. And it's just a lot to deal with. And like, they're doing all that obviously without Kristaps Porzingis, which they're going to have to continue to do for a while. And they don't look much worse for wear because Al Horford is ageless. The guy is a miracle of modern science. And behind him, they've gotten like decent enough backup center play from guys like, you know, Cornette, Tillman, Keita, and there's just, I mean, like, obviously Tatum comes out looking like, I mean, he was maybe the best player in the league through the first week of the season.
Yeah,
he had
I think he was.
Kind of a rough night. Last night, shot 1 for 8 from deep. But he's been unbelievable. And, like, not only the way that he's shooting the pull-up 3, which was, like, the one kind of big hole in his game last year, where he was shooting pull-up 3s at, like, 28%. Now he's up over 40% on that shot. And that's complementing, I think, vastly improved playmaking and just decision-making in general. Like, when he's seeing 2 bodies, he's making quick, excellent decisions that get the defense in rotation. that are like starting the chain reaction that's creating a ton of those open threes. And then also, as I've like tried to harp on before with Tatum, I don't think he gets enough due, but he's just such a good and willing screener. And the number of advantages that's able to create for Boston's offense in the like decisions that it forces the defense into. Like, are you going to switch yourself into a bad matchup where you have one of your weaker defenders guarding Jason Tatum on a switch, or are you going to put 2 on the ball to avoid that switch? And then that's going to give, whoever Tatum's screening for, whether it's on or off the ball, that's going to give them an opportunity to flare into open space, whether with a cut toward the basket, flaring out to the three-point line. And he's doing that time after time after time. And I don't think he gets enough credit for how unselfish he is as the leader of, arguably the best team in the league right now. And then his willingness to do that kind of dirty work to generate advantages, not necessarily for himself, but for others on the team. He's been tremendous. Obviously, Jaylen Brown's looked great. Derek White has been phenomenal. And he's been great offensively, but I think he's at a point where he's up there in the conversation with Suggs and Caruso and his teammate Drew Holiday as like one of the best guard defenders in the league. And it's not just the stuff he does at the point of attack, it's the stuff he does on like the lower half of the defense, where that is such a luxury for Boston to have. Like guards who can do actual rim protecting stuff. Like there was a play last night against Milwaukee. Bucks run Dame Giannis pick and roll. White tracks Lillard under the screen, stays on his hip. Tillman kind of steps up to help on the drive, so Dame lays it down to Giannis, who's like diving basically full speed toward the basket. White veer switches from Damian Lillard onto Giannis, goes vertical at the rim to contest and block his shot. Like there are like maybe 2 or 3 guards in the league who can make a play like that. And
The
he's
Celtics
like,
have 2 of them.
yeah, the Celtics have 2 of them, and they're like the 3rd and 4th most important players on their team.
Yeah.
Like
They're
it's
a
really
juggernaut.
insane.
Full stop. And I mean, the Thunder, I know Chicco said you think you picked the Knicks to win the East. So
Yeah,
we're not, but
Knicks.
the West, we're all in agreement, or we were all in agreement in that preseason predictions post that we put up on the app that the Thunder would win the West. They've been that dominant through the West. And Wolfond's probably going to roll his eyes at this because he's heard me reference this for about 7 years now. I do this exercise every year where I try either by watching as many games as I can or by going watching condensed versions the night after, using box score stats, all that stuff, where I try to track every season who the best player on the court was for every single game played. I've done it now for 6 seasons. This is the 7th time I'm doing it. What I love about the Thunder, and like I don't think anyone's debating that Shea has been their best player overall through the 3 games, but what I love about them is, at least through the way I've viewed it, one of Shea, Jalen Williams, or Chet Holmgren has been the best player on the floor once each so far. Like, they just look really good. What have you seen from that trio, and do you think Jalen and Chet are actually ready at this stage of their careers to be the number 2 and 3 guys on like a championship caliber team?
Yeah, I think they look like they're ready to take on that pressure of being the contender. I mean, they're acting like it. Like, they're fearless. They go into these. Chemistry is a huge thing with these teams, and you see after these games, the whole group post-game interview, the Barks. Like, you can see how connected this team is. But we look at Chet. I mean, the performance he had against the Nuggets on both ends of the floor, performing against Jokic, and also, there's that one sequence where he has the huge block, comes back the other end with the dunk in transition. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think that, obviously, Victor Wembanyama stole the show last year and was Rookie of the Year. But, I mean, any other year, Chet was more than deserving to win Rookie of the Year honors. But, you're seeing the way that he's able to play the 5 last year. And this year it's going to be easy for him physically because he doesn't have to go night after night physically against the top centers. He's going to be at the 4, and you have Hardenstein that's still coming back, and that's another dimension and luxury that the Thunder are going to have going forward. That's only going to help them. And then obviously what we're seeing from Jalen Williams there, and the steps that he continues to make, it's kind of hard to believe he slipped that far in the draft. Pretty deep in the first round for a guy of his talent.
I can't remember if Wolfond and I have talked about this on Pound the Rock, the podcast last year, but his like efficiency, the way he moves, and I know he's not that player. Like, well, he's going to be a good defensive player, but not at Kawhi level. But what I'm saying is sometimes when I watch him, like the efficiency with which he moves and the efficiency in the mid range, and I don't know how calm he seems doing it all, it does kind of like, it makes me think of Kawhi at his best. And I'm not, again, saying he's not going to be a 2-time Finals MVP. Well, maybe he will. I don't know. But like that, like I just think he's such a great player, and the fact that he's probably the 2nd or 3rd maybe best player on this team is ridiculous. This is kind of a good segue for Chicco because you mentioned that you can't believe, Chet Holmgren is like the second best rookie from his class, or that Wembanyama stole the show last year, given how good Chet Holmgren is. That was last year's rookie class, and we know how great that was. This year, rookie class isn't quite the same. So why don't you tell us what the thing that caught your eye the first week is, and then we can talk about the rookies a bit.
Yeah, I went a little bit off the board here, but Ryan Dunn of the Phoenix Suns, rookie, number 28 pick, comes from a program, Virginia, that's really not known for its offense at all. Defensive-minded program under Tony Bennett. They played this pack line defense, but there has been players in recent years that have produced offensively from that program. We've seen Malcolm Brogdon, Trey Murphy. Those are just a few of the players that have kind of come out there and shown that they can do a little bit more offense than just the defense that they were known for. And that was kind of known about Dunn. His size, his wingspan, 7'1". I think a lot of people knew that he was going to be a pretty impactful defender at the next level. He also averaged 2.3 blocks a game, so pretty crazy stuff for a guard, a wing player. So I think the Suns, you're looking for, especially on the team with all those stars, right? You're looking for a guy that's not as high usage, that can complement the stars you have in place. And he's filled that role to a T so far with his defense. The way he's been, 4 games, he's guarded LeBron twice. He's guarded Luka Doncic. Yeah. He's guarded James Harden. And he's more than held his own. Last night against the Lakers, he's running around screens trying to play one-on-one against LeBron and just basically no switches. I got LeBron, let me take him. And he wasn't afraid of that challenge. Forced a shot clock violation. He did some really good things guarding LeBron last night. And all that stuff has been great, but I think the icing on the cake is the three-point shooting. Nobody thought or saw this coming when they drafted him. And even in Summer League, at college, it wasn't a big part of his game. Offense wasn't a big part of his game either. I think his final 12 games at Virginia, he cracked double digits just once. So, nobody saw any sort of this offensive explosion coming from him. And then he comes in the preseason, shoots the ball pretty well. And I think in the preseason alone, he made more threes. I think he made 13 in the preseason, and I think that was more than what he did his entire collegiate career. So the fact that they're able to get a guy, another floor spacer, guys, they can give a little bit extra on offense, on top of the defense he's shown in 15, 20-minute spurts. This is amazing for the Suns. Fine. That deep in the first round.
28th pick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks legit. Wolfond, I know you've spoken in the past about the Suns having fake depth. This depth where it's they've got these recognizable names that play in the NBA, but and they'll play in the regular season, but they're not playoff caliber rotation players. I know they got Tyus Jones this year too. It's not just Ryan Dunn, but does Ryan Dunn pass the smell test for you? Are you buying this stock that he is a legit NBA rotation player that can actually play playoff minutes?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying it. When I talk about fake depth, it's kind of dudes who can sop up some minutes during the regular season and be okay, but then come playoff time, they're going to find themselves out of the rotation or just not guys that you want to be relying on. And I don't know that I'm quite there with Ryan Dunn as a rookie. I love the confidence he plays with, and that gives me maybe, I guess a little bit more optimism that he can stick come playoff time this year, right out the gate. I think the three-point shooting is the one that's going to determine whether that's the case because, to Chico's point, yeah, he made 12 threes his entire collegiate career. 2 years, I think something 70 games in college, he hit 12 threes. Hit 13 across 4 or 5 preseason games. Has hit 7 so far in his NBA career and is shooting them at 43%. Yeah. Defenses aren't yet treating him as a shooter. It's still all pretty stationary, mostly from the corners. In terms of doing it on the move, doing it above the break, I think he still has a long way to go to prove that that's actually real. And that, to me, is what will determine whether he can actually play in the playoffs. Because the Suns have had guys who can defend. Josh Okogie, unbelievable defender, still didn't make much of an impact in the playoffs because of his shooting limitations and the fact that it kind of crippled their offense when he was out there. So I think that is a big thing that's going to determine whether he can stick. But he does have some of these other offensive skills as well, his ability to kind of finish at the rim. He had an unbelievable finish in transition last night where this was after the Suns were playing a lineup where he was basically the center. maybe you could say Royce O'Neal was the center in that lineup, but Dunn was the tallest player on the floor. He comes over as the low man, makes a stop on LeBron at the rim, runs the other way. Booker hits him with a lead pass, and he Euro steps into a reverse layup finish. Like, that's the kind of stuff where if the shot's not falling, he's going to have to be able to contribute as a cutter, as a finisher. And if he can do that, then yeah, I have high hopes for him as a rotation piece because the defense is already looking super legit. Like, his ability to navigate screens at his size, his footwork, his hands, his instincts. Like, I think there's still some rookie mistakes that he needs to iron out. Like, you know, Luka put 5 fouls on him. Austin Reeves caught him with his hand in the cookie jar last night, hit him with a 4-point play. Another play that was like an inbounds play with the Lakers with 1 second on the shot clock where he turned his back on Gabe Vincent in the corner and gave up a 3. Like, the mistakes are still there, but the raw tools are, like, off the charts.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he gives the Suns kind of exactly what they needed in a role player, which is like last year, what did they need the most, right? They needed more size on the wing, more perimeter defense, and more three-point shooting volume. And if you look at like the changes from last year to this year, Coach Bud has, I think, a lot to do with this. They were 21st in three-point attempt rate last year. So far this year, they're 8th. And Ryan Dunn has the highest three-point attempt rate on the team. He's averaging almost 10 three-point attempts per 36 minutes. So if he can keep hitting them at anything close to the efficiency that he's hit them at so far, then that's a hugely valuable player for them who maybe most importantly is going to help them fill out some of the small ball lineups.
Yep.
Because Yusuf Nurkic has not looked very good to start the season. I think Mason Plumlee is a perfectly fine backup center, but I think they showed in that game. I mean, 4 games into the season, they're already kind of going all out to win these games. And Bud is showing the willingness to, like, okay, it's not working with Nurkic. It's not working with Plumlee. Let's go small and see what happens. And that won them the game last night. And Dunn was a big part of that.
Yeah, he's unquestionably been not just a vital part of the Suns' rotation to start the season, but I think you can say he's unquestionably been the best rookie in the NBA through opening week. Now,
damn him with faint praise.
Yeah, exactly. That probably says more about it says more about the rookie class than it does about Ryan Dunn. Shout out Adrian in the control room, who I know prepped some good stats for us, some cool stats for us, where he was comparing the first 3 games of the top 5 picks from this draft class to the first 3 games of what guys usually look like in those draft slots, and it's bad. I know these are somewhat unfair just based on last year, but you like Wemby versus Reza Shea, Brandon Miller versus Alex Sarr, Scoot Henderson versus Reed Shepherd is probably the only one that's somewhat close, and even then, not really. It's bad. Like, it's not just not as good as last year. It's terrible. Jamison Battle, okay, an undrafted guy wearing a hockey number. He wears number 77 for the tanking Raptors, was leading the NBA in rookie scoring up until last night. I believe it's now Carrington from the Wizards who's leading the NBA in rookie scoring at, what is it here? What do we got here? 8.7 points per game. I went back this morning and looked. I got back 60 years before my screen crashed, but in those last 60 years, I could not find a year where any rookie scoring leader averaged less than 11.3 points per game, and that was Mike Miller in 2000-2001. So,
which was also like a notoriously terrible draft.
Yes, was that the Olowokandi year when Mike Olowokandi?
No, Olowokandi was in the 90s. That was Kenyon Martin, I think.
Yes, the Kenyon Martin draft.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's how bad this draft class is. Like it could possibly be the worst ever. It's certainly the worst in over a decade, maybe the worst since the turn of the century. Have there been any guys, like, okay, we know the top guys haven't been, like Reza Shea hasn't looked good. Sarr, I think, had 1 good game. Shepherd, we all agree, is gonna be good, but hasn't shown anything yet. Castle in San Antonio, I think, surprisingly, has earned some of Pop's trust early, but some growing pains to go there. Zach Edey, I think he was all of our picks to win Rookie of the Year. Or not you, Chicco.
Shepherd.
You had Reed Shepherd. Okay, I think Wolfond and I both picked Zach Edey. Again, like I wouldn't say he's been terrible, but hasn't been that good. The guys that have impressed, to be honest, it's like Ryan Dunn, who we talked about, and then this like group of Raptors rookies that a lot of people didn't even know, like Jamal Shed, who had a great college career but went in the 2nd round. Jonathan Mobo was a 2nd round pick. I mentioned Jamison Battle, undrafted guy wearing a hockey number. Like the Raptors might have They got the best rookie class here from a very bad draft class, which is hilarious because they didn't even have their own pick in it. But yeah, just general thoughts, Chicco, on what you've seen from this rookie class. If anyone other than Ryan Dunn or a Raptor has impressed you.
Yeah, you would think of it, the talent, especially like Reed Sheppard as someone I was very high on coming into the year, had one of the more efficient seasons in college basketball. And I think for him, it's going to take some time to get some more playing time. I mean, he's behind the depth chart, obviously. They got Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet. So he's easily, understandably behind the pecking order a bit. But I do think some of the skills that he has was the three-point shooting, the playmaking. He's not very big positionally for a guard. But the way he was able to play defense in Kentucky and the way he was in high school, like scrappy defender, a lot like Fred VanVleet, not a guy that's athletically gifted, but it just was so smart with his instincts, his ability to read the game, get his hands on deflections and passing lanes. So I think there is a scenario for the Rockets this year where Reed Sheppard does find his way into the rotation because simply those are areas where the Rockets definitely need to improve. And Stephen Castle, we touched on him earlier, coming out of the defending champs from UConn. He's earned some playing time early on from Pop and also because of Devin Vassell's early injury. And, you're seeing flashes of like what he can do. I think there was some talk into the draft that he wanted to become a point guard long term. And obviously that's not going to be the case with Chris Paul and Jones on the roster. But he's going to have the opportunity to learn behind Chris Paul. But you're seeing some of the opportunity he's had so far. When they put the ball in his hands, they've had him initiate the offense. And, there are flashes of the playmaking, the court vision that you want to see in a point guard long term. And I think he presents such a mismatch problem with his size for the guard position, his ability to cut and find openings and play off of Wemby. I do think eventually those two guys are going to kind of separate themselves as probably the better rookies in this class. But, yeah, it's been an odd start for sure for this rookie class.
Sledding. Wolfond?
I think Yves Missi with the Pelicans has looked really solid. I don't know how high the ceiling is there because he is just sort of one of these screen and dive, run and jump type of centers that are being phased out of the league a little bit. Now, that's not to say he can't develop some more ball skill as his career progresses. And I think the early indications for a Pelicans team that desperately needs depth at the center position. He's not starting right now, but it kind of feels like a matter of time to me before he is starting over Daniel Tice in New Orleans. Then also, Trey Murphy is going to get back, and presumably they're going to start small, and he'll be coming off the bench again. But again, they're going to need that center depth, and so far he's looked like the best center on the roster. So I've been impressed with him. But again, and I sort of feel that way about a lot of these guys, whether you're talking about Dunn, whether you're talking about the guys on the Raptors, the guys who have looked most ready and overall best out of this rookie class are guys who I think you expect to be role players in the future. And I think that's part of what we're seeing is the reason that I picked Zach Edey to win Rookie of the Year was just thinking about opportunity.
Yeah.
And for so many of these guys, it's like you look at Reed Sheppard, it's not that I don't think he had a chance to be good right out of the gate, but he's on a team where he's jockeying for playing time with 9, 10, 11 other guys, and he's on a team that's trying to win right now. And Reese Shea, kind of the same thing. The Hawks are maybe in a little bit of a limbo right now in terms of what they're trying to do.
They're the Hawks. Yeah, the Hawks are the Hawks.
Yes, they're a tailor-made 9 seed. Yeah. So I think it's the guys at the top of the lottery are whether it's Reese Shea, Sarr, Ron Holland, the guys who are the big upswing plays, just clearly aren't ready to be those types of players for their rebuilding teams. Whereas the guys who are, essentially destined to be role players for better teams are showing that they're capable of doing that. And it might be a long time before we know what, Alex Sarr is going to be. I think he's flashed a lot of defensive potential. The offense has been a complete mess. But, whether it's someone like him or like Buzelis in Chicago, I just think we're seeing that they were upswing plays for a reason. Upside swings for a reason. They're kind of, their teams are hoping that they can turn into franchise type players in the long run, but maybe weren't even expecting them to be that right off the bat.
Yeah.
Whereas the guys who were drafted to be role players have shown that they can be good role players.
Yeah. Jamal Shed looks like he's going to be a solid guard in the NBA for like 12 years. You know, like
Yeah.
a solid two-way guard for 12 years. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, some of those top-end guys seem to have very low floors. Like they might have that upside teams were betting on, but they don't seem to have the floors that most guys drafted that high have, where it's like, even if they're a quote-unquote bust, it's like, oh, they're a bust because they're just like a solid starter or a sixth man instead of being a typical number one pick. In this case, we're looking at guys who like, if they hit the low end of, of their floor here, like we're talking about guys who are barely rotation players.
Yeah, which that's what they look like right now.
Yeah.
I think, and for a couple of them, I think it will stay that way. Like, a couple of them are going to bust. It happens every draft. And a couple of them will turn into, you would hope, will turn into like all-star caliber players. Like every draft,
not get carried away.
Even the worst draft classes will usually produce at least a couple of all-stars. Yeah. So those guys are presumably in this class somewhere. Where are they going to come from? I would still say like Shepherd is like the most likely to turn into that caliber player. But yeah, I don't know. It could be Castle. Or, I don't know. I don't know if it could be Sarr. Like, the offense is worse than I could have imagined, even though it's still super early.
I had even clinging in Portland. This guy's going to get a lot of opportunity eventually. Time Lord just never seems to be healthy. And the Aiden contract, I'm sure Portland is trying to do. It's probably hard to move that contract, but I'm sure Portland could. They would try to get rid of that to clear the space for him. But, he's even had some stretches where the rebounding or shot blocking, like, guys of his size that are 7'2" and that wingspan. I think his physical comparison, like lengthwise and everything, like a lot of it is the Walker Kessler or Rudy Gobert type of that body. So I still think for sure like he's obviously going to take some time, but he's going to get an opportunity, like we talked about, in a rebuilding situation in Portland where they're not expected to win. And the priority is to develop.
Yeah, I think Klingon's going to be an awesome defensive center.
Same.
And kind of already is a pretty good defensive center, honestly.
Yeah. I think he looks a little more NBA ready. Not quite NBA ready, but more so than some of the other guys at the top of that draft. Not surprising. All right, from a bunch of rookies who maybe aren't setting the world on fire to a guy who is loving his new role, and that's Anthony Davis in J.J. Redick's system here as the hub of the offense. Just want to pull up the numbers. So through 4 games, Anthony Davis averaging a career-high 32.8 points, getting to the free throw line 13 times per game, also averaging 12 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.5 blocks, and 1.5 steals. So I'll just ask you guys, how real do you think this is? Because, look, in terms of his touches, time of possession, they're up, but they're not up by as much as you'd think. The main difference here seems to be that he's just shooting it more. Like his field goal attempts per game, if you look at what his career with the Lakers was before this season, what his career was in general before this season, like 17 a game. This year he's shooting it 20 times a game. And then, like I said, getting to the free throw line is the big thing right now. So, Chicco, I'll start with you. How real do you think this is in terms of AD playing at like a 30-point per game MVP level pace as the hub of J.J. Redick's offense?
Yeah, it's certainly awesome to see, but it's definitely gonna be tough to kind of sustain that for an entire season. Obviously, I know he played in 72, 73 games last year, but we obviously know his history with injury struggles that he's had during the last few years since they won the title. But I do think it is kind of it's good that J.J. Redick is using him as that offensive hub. I feel like Anthony Davis's passing is a little bit underrated, considering that since he's been with the Lakers, he's been around the 80th percentile in terms of assist percentage for big men. So I think using him in the offense, keeping him active, using him as a screener and a guy that he can hand off the ball. Like you've seen the passes he's made so far out of the high post, whether it's Austin Reeves cutting to the rim or LeBron. Like you're seeing another dimension to the offense, and the Lakers offense under Redick, as we've seen so far, there's a lot more life. It's not as stagnant. There is motion. So I don't know how sustainable it is, but I think most importantly right now, they are doing something different. It is different from what they had with Darvin Ham. And most importantly, the players are buying in. Like you see AD and you see LeBron talk about post-game, talk about how much faith and trust that they have in J.J. Redick. And as a first-year head coach, getting those two guys to buy in is huge because that will get everyone else to fall in line and also buy into the culture you're trying to establish there.
100%. Wolfond, what do you think is different about the way JJ is using AD as opposed to Darvin Ham, or maybe you don't think there's any difference and he's just letting it fly more. I don't know.
No, I do think there's a difference. I think it's maybe been a little bit more subtle than people have made it out to be. Like in terms of the number of touches, the time of possession per game, it's like up slightly, but not a significant amount. I almost think it's like more about the spots on the floor that they're getting him the ball. Like they're doing a lot more in terms of like getting him the ball kind of in the middle of the floor and the elbow area and the high post, which is, we're talking about stuff that's jumped out to us through the first week of the season. If you look around the league, there are a lot of teams that are doing that. Like Cleveland's doing that with Mobley. The Thunder are doing that more with Chet. And this has been like a trend in the league's moving this way for the last couple of years. I wrote about it last year, but just a general move toward more hub-style offense where big men are orchestrating more.
Who shared that post when you wrote it at the time?
One JJ Redick, the Los Angeles Lakers head coach. So thank you for that plug, Cash. I appreciate it. But yeah, I think it makes sense because, frankly, AD is the Lakers' best player at this point. Like LeBron, he had that monster, 32-point triple-double against the Kings. And LeBron's still amazing. Like, I just think it's clear the guy's going to turn 40. Like, the athleticism is not what it was. And even when he's having big offensive games like that, a lot of it is jump shooting. And in terms of, like, the explosiveness going, finishing at the rim, like, that's just not really there anymore. And the Lakers are, like, trying to preserve him. Like, he is spending less time with the ball in his hands than he has in any other season in, like, the tracking era. So they're playing him more off the ball. A lot of those on-ball reps are going to Austin Reeves, who's been fantastic, but a lot of it is also they're running more stuff through AD. So if you're talking about, in terms of like the counting stats, he's leading the league in scoring right now. I don't think that's going to continue, but can he have like the best scoring season of his career? I think that's possible because they're empowering him and because he is, I think, going to be the kind of focal point of their offense moving forward. And I think he's taken to that challenge extremely well. Just in terms of the assertiveness he's playing with the decision-making, I don't think I'm as impressed with the passing as Chicco is, but I think as far as like the early returns on doing that, on making him that focal point, I mean, it's been as good as you could have possibly hoped. So obviously, like, not only staying on the floor in terms of his health, but like he looks unbelievably spry right now. Yeah. Like, is he going to look that way 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road? That's kind of the big question to me. But yeah, he's been awesome, and it's a big reason. I mean, it's the biggest reason I think that the Lakers are off to the start they're off to.
Yeah, okay, then real quick before we get out of here, I'll just ask you both, has AD started the season, and the Lakers 3-1 start, almost 4-0 if they could have pulled off the game in Phoenix, has anything about it made you think that they are better than what you thought a week ago? Like, has their start made you reconsider what might be possible for this Lakers team coached by JJ Redick this season?
I don't think I'm there yet in terms of them being like a title contender or even like in the upper echelon. Like, there are still clear flaws of the team. I still think they need 3-point shooting, the depth behind the center position. I don't know if you want to go with Jackson Hayes if you can trust him to be your backup center the entire year. I know obviously some guys are injured right now, Christian Wood, Vanderbilt, but I do think that's an area that needs to be addressed if they truly hope to establish themselves as a contender. And we saw when the Lakers won a title, like that center depth was huge. I mean, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, like those guys didn't put up the sexiest stats, but they were very impactful in terms of being able to, help AD by covering the center at certain portions, at certain minutes, and delivering that title run they had in the bubble in 2020.
I think the Lakers are going to be a little bit better than I thought they were going to be, but I don't know if that changes my opinion about like what they're actually capable of in the big picture. It's still kind of like, probably in the play-in range, maybe they can get up to like 5th or 6th, and like maybe they can win a round in like a best case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's where I was at coming into the year, and that's still where I'm at, even though I think maybe they're like a slight notch better. And honestly, if it has changed my opinion, the biggest reason is probably like not even just what I've seen from AD, but what I've seen from like Reeves and Hachimura. Like, those guys have been unbelievable. And just like quickly, because we are having fun with small sample sizes, the Lakers have been 63 points per 100 possessions better with Rui on the floor through their first 4 games. I just love like the physicality and force that he's playing with at both ends, obviously shooting the hell out of the ball as well. And I think the most important thing that JJ Redick has done, on top of like the offensive organization that he's brought to the team, is just starting the season with the Lakers' best starting lineup
Yes.
in place, which took Darvin Ham like 50-some games to get to last year, and just starting the season with that starting five.
Even though
has
Darvin
been-
Ham had seen that starting lineup the year before help him get to the Western Conference Finals, he got cute with it last year. Like, we can wait.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And on like Rui and Reeves have been
Yes.
phenomenal. Like that's been almost as big a story, I think, as the AD thing. So yeah, I think this team like has a chance to be pretty good. But in terms of like ceiling, I still, it still feels like kind of second round at best.
I agree with that. I'd say coming into the year, I had them as a play-in team that I could also see missing the postseason altogether. Whereas now, I know it's only been 4 games, but I'm quite comfortable saying that if LeBron and AD are healthy, I don't see any way this team misses the postseason altogether. To me now, they're like a surefire, at least play-in team that could actually challenge to get in the top 6 and maybe win a round. And I just think the way JJ's utilized his guys, the fact that he's rolling with their best lineup, their best players more often, the way it's all coming together, to me, makes me think they're back to being that team that when LeBron and AD are on the court, are going to be very, very competent and murk a lot of teams. And I think that's going to help them get, at the very least, into the postseason, if not the playoffs proper, and if not, into the second round. But we'll have plenty more to dissect and talk about as the season rolls on when it comes to the Lakers. I'm sure this is not the last time we'll talk about the Lakers, and obviously not the last time both of you will be here. So for Chicco Nacion, for Lakers offensive coordinator Joe Wolfond, for Adrian and Zach in the control room, my name is Joseph Casciaro. This has been the Unfiltered Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.